So now I'm going to talk about flex containers justify content property. So before I begin, I want you to take a moment to pause the video and write this code on your own. Basically the code begins from here. We have a div container and then we have about 5 div class items. So and the styling sheet of the file goes as on the screen. So we have items that have the following property and then we have the container that have the following property. So pause the video and write this code on your own. So now I'm going to display the outcome of the code. This is the outcome of the code. So without the display flex property and with the display flex property, it should be like this. I know that mentioning flex direction row does not have any effect on the code because by default the behavior of flex is flex direction row, but I still like because it explicitly mentions if it is column or row, so I like it for readability purposes. So before I attempt to explain the justify content property, I'm going to give an example first and then we will talk with respect to the example. So first I want you to take a look at this output. So we can see that the 1 2 3 4 5 they are beginning from the start of the screen, right? So what happens if I write here justify content flex end? So now we are saying that they have shifted horizontally without changing the order of the elements to the end of the screen, and the behavior is horizontal. If it was vertical, then we would say the elements stacked on top of each other like 1 2 3 4 5, but this behavior isn't like this. This is a horizontal behavior. So just the arrangement of items changed without changing the direction. They have collectively just shifted from here to here. So basically this is the justify content property. The justify content property, what it does is it aligns the content of children div items along the main axis. So the main axis is indicated by the flex direction property, whether it is column or row. So if it is row, then the justify content will align the items horizontally on the screen with respect to the property that we mentioned here. But if it is the column property here, then the justify content will align the items vertically with the same property. So in the row behavior, we notice that the flex end property align the items horizontally on the end of the horizontal side of screen, right? Here this was the before property, they are horizontally aligned, but if we use the flex direction column property, then we will see that they are vertically aligned towards the end of the screen like this. So to understand the property better, we are just going to use the row property for starters, and then when we have fully understood the row property, the vertical behavior is not very difficult to understand after we have understood the horizontal behavior. So next property I want to talk about is the center property. So what it does is it aligns the item horizontally on the center of the screen. There is some equal partition on the left and there is some equal partition on the right, but the behavior we want to understand is the horizontal behavior, because here we have the flex direction row. If it was flex direction column, then it would be vertically towards the center. So we have some space here and we have some space here, so it is vertically towards the center of the screen. Let's set it back to row. So the next property I want to talk about is the space between property. So first I will show the property, then I will explain what it is. So what space between does is it starts the elements from the flex start position, this position, that is the also the default behavior of the justify content. So the justify content, I forgot to mention about its default behavior. So the flex start is the default behavior of the justify content, but that horizontally starts the items from the start of the screen. As it is the default behavior, therefore it does not have any effect, so even if we remove it, it will have the same effect. So now back onto the space between property. So what space between does it starts the element from the flex start position and the flex end position for the last element, and in between and among the elements we have the equal space. So we have equal space here, we have equal space here, we have equal space here, and we have equal space here. So it provides equal space between the elements. The other property I want to talk about is the space around property. Space around property. So what it does is it will leave some space in the start and it will leave some space in the end after the last element, and in between the elements it will have twice the space of the start or the end element. So here we have this figure that demonstrates how this works. It is easier to understand with the graphical explanation. So we have some space here, and here we have twice the space of this amount. Same goes for here, we have the twice the space of this amount or this amount, since they are equal spaces. So the next property, which is also the last property that I want to talk about, is the space evenly property. So what space evenly does is it provides equal space in the start, in the end, and among the elements. Just like the name mentions, it provides equal space. Now that we have understood the behavior of the row, it is not very difficult to understand the behavior of the column. So for column, like you can imagine, space evenly will does is it will vertically have some space in the start, have some space in the end, and among the elements it will vertically have the same amount of space as well. Similarly for space between, in the start and in the end it will have no space, but among the elements it will have equal space. So in the start we have no space. This space here is just because of the margin. It does not belong to the spacing provided by the justify content, and in the end we don't have any space. This is the margin space, so it does not belong to the justify content, and among the elements we have equal space. So I hope this tutorial made your understanding clear of the justify content property of the flex container.